All right.
Oh,
So
that was
moving
a
back to.
huge gust right now. Okay, I'm gonna turn on sound do a treatment. I'm afraid
Okay.
the
Well,
breathing treatment. I'm
all
afraid
right.
yeah,
All right. Well,
electric
well, look.
box.
Yeah, if you want to mute yourself during that, and then when you're ready to come back in, we'll welcome your taking part.
All right.
So last week in Ki Tisa, we read about getting all that stuff needed to construct the Mishkan, the traveling tabernacle for sacrifices and other rituals during the years of wandering to come. And this week in Vayakhel, Moses unrolls the heaven-sent blueprints and gets the community working together to actually build it, guided by the chief artisan, Bezalel, depicted here by one of the artists that we feature often because of his well-researched biblical imagery, French-born Jacques Tissot, who spent much of his artistic career in England, where he was known as James Tissot. Picking up on the Talmudic descriptions of Bezalel being especially skilled at metalwork, Tissot shows him as a youthful goldsmith with leather apron and surrounded by the tools for shaping and engraving the ceremonial objects and furniture as he ponders the tasks ahead. Interestingly, Tissot gave an earlier, older biblical craftsman a similar look, surrounding Noah with wood shavings in the unfinished ark. And you can see something of the same look and posture of the artist himself in that photo from 1860. Community is the Vayakhel theme in this contemporary abstract painting by American-born Israeli artist Yoram Ranan. The people he shows are all different sizes, shapes, and colors, and yet are connected. He contrasts earth tones with the celestial blues, a mix, he says, is designed to enhance the feeling of unification of heaven and earth. New Jersey-born Yoram Ranan emigrated to Israel in the 1970s, and he has his studio at Beit Meir, a moshav in the hills about 9 miles from Jerusalem. The makers of the Mishkan were carpenters and metal workers, but weavers of fabric were called upon in the instructions, with specific reference to the women of the community. Alabama artist and educator Star Weems shows their hands weaving together the multicolored threads. This is from her Ancient Illuminations series, a watercolor for each of the parashot, using her texture technique of layering various colors on the canvas and then scraping off parts of the layers to reveal the hues underneath. Los Angeles-based illustrator Hillel Smith also uses a woven fabric image in the Vayakhel entry of his Parsha Posters series, using advertising and publicity techniques to illuminate the Torah chapters. With the color schemes described in the Parsha, Hillel Smith also weaves the Hebrew of the title, Vav Yud Kof Chet Lamed, letters which become more apparent as you view it from a distance. Calligraphy also provides a way into the Parsha for Nireh Or, the collaboration of Rabbi Haley Goldstein and visual artist Lizzie Sivitz from their collection Nireh Or Illuminating the Weekly Torah Portion. The words they choose, Kol Nediv Libo, everyone who is generous of heart, are how Moses asks for the donations of gold, silver, copper, yarn, lumber, all the stuff, and they respond with such zeal that soon there's too much, more than is needed. In her explanation, Rabbi Haley quotes a 19th century Hasidic commentator, Sfat Emet, by Yehuda Arya Leib Alter, which says that the people's generous response acted as a lamp to illuminate the love for God that was hidden by the mistake with the golden calf. From the Women of the Book collection of 54 original pieces, one for each parsha, done by 54 Jewish women artists from around the world, Vayakhel is by New York-born artist and calligrapher Sharon Binder, who also draws her inspiration from the letters of the text, pointing out that women are acknowledged as contributing through their craft-making to construction of the Mishkan. The artist says she sought to capture the essence of word and image as they guide into one's soul, and drawing from a midrash that has Bezalel using the letters of the Hebrew alphabet to create the Mishkan, there is the Aleph Beit flying between the cheruvim, facing one another on the cover of the ark in the tabernacle. Sharon Binder now lives in Israel, and she has a studio in Hutzot HaYotzer, the Jerusalem Artists Colony. Florida-based artist Mar Martinez draws on her Syrian and Latinx heritage in her Vayakhel sculpture painting, a tzedek box, to represent how individuals formed a community to build the Mishkan. The tzedek box is a relatively recent ritual that involves a box or a container of some sort in which you put a note every time you work toward building a better world, and once a year the box is opened to read the notes. The artist says she used the contemporary technique of laser cutting paired with ancient materials like gold leaf. The box is made of concentric circles symbolizing unity and togetherness. The gold leaf and transparent acrylic glow and allow light to freely pass through, creating a space for the divine presence to rest. As Mar Martinez explains, we invite the Mishkan through acts of kindness and holiness, and through acts of righteousness, justice, and care for our community, we are able to achieve unity, a unity that is greater than the sum of its disparate parts. And it's
Alan?
back to the artist. Yes.
Alan, Matan wrote in the chat that he can't see the images. And
really?
We're seeing them just fine.
Okay, hang on a second.
I can see them fine.
Is that better? Now do you see them?
Yeah. Okay, Matan, are you seeing them now?
No.
And then we put the share back up again.
I click on screen share or something.
No, don't click on screen share.
I'm the one who's clicking on
Okay, now I'm
screen
seeing
share.
them. Now I'm seeing
Now
them.
you're seeing it. Okay. Oh,
Great.
all right. Well, I'm glad I got you in time for Mar Martinez, who is one of the new artists that we've added to the group. And then we'll go back to an old standby. It's back to the artist designer of the Mishkan, Bezalel, in the Vayakhel painting by English-born Israeli artist Darius Gilmont. With all those donated materials stacked up in the workshop, there's the barefoot Bezalel engraving a gold-covered altar over on the left, and meanwhile there's his cohort, Oholiav, putting the finishing touches on the great menorah, each of them following the detailed instructions, blueprints, in the Parsha. That's from Darius Gilmont, and it does make me wonder, could those Mishkan plans have been inspired or have inspired the instructions that are included with IKEA DIY furniture? Anyway, that's our art for this look at Vayakhel.
Good joke.
So I'm glad that here Ruth Ellen is on. Wonderful. We were just asking about you, Ruth Ellen, just before you joined in.
I muted everything. It's a little crazy, but here I am. And I'm so glad to see Aviva and Yehuda. Last week, I wanted to read your notes from the front or whatever you want to call it, and I didn't. And yet, I read yesterday. I'm glad you're safe and everything. It's so, in a way, simple but so powerful. And I wish you all the best, everybody. Okay.
Well, we were thinking about you and how, we all have the various craziness going on in our lives and wherever we are, but yet we come together and here we are. This is a very stable thing.
This is I'm back on daylight savings time, so it's 4:00 for me. So that was a little adjustment too.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here.
Is there time change in Israel?
There is, but it's not the same. It'll be
From now.
after Passover here. And then I think after the holidays. It's more tied to the calendar, but there is a time change.
Is it? But right now you're still 12 hours different. So. Okay.
I just came back and NPR talked about the Kona storms that you're having. Somebody mentioned that. Apparently they've lost power all over Ohio, West Virginia, Ohio the worst. And so I don't know if you guys.
We lost Arnie because he has no power. And
they said state of emergency.
And this is our front yard that I'm showing. So it's It was much more dramatic during the night when we had wind gusts. According to the news reports, we had wind gusts up to 75 miles an hour. So that's hurricane strength.
That's something that usually only happens at a certain time of year. Is it unusual to happen right now, or is it just helter-skelter sort of?
Hadn't happened in the 13 years we've lived here. So,
Oh, wow. I thought it was something that was.
not on this island. We're usually protected. We have those two big bumps in the middle of the island that usually protect us from the typical weather patterns. But this is untypical because it's coming up. It's drawing winds up from the south, and that is causing a significant amount of damage, power outages, things like that.
The wrath of somebody.
Well, we want to talk about Misha Berach. I see Sarah I think she came back on, but is doing a treatment right now. So she's definitely in our thoughts, and Marilyn and Jan Ray and everybody.
And Ruth Ellen.
Oh, thank you. I've lost like 4 pounds. So this, they say how do you lose weight? The move on with not enough time because you have too much stuff diets. I'm starting to feel unburdened and lighter. Like today, I got the notice what my monthly insurance they're going to take out, and now that my home insurance is gone, it's like 20% of what it is.
Okay, and Matan is adding some people to the Misha Berach list. Steve Winningham, Betsy Stoller, and Roy Wofford. I'd say Misha Berach for some of my family members who've just been sick with colds and stuff, but nothing serious.
My friend Danny Lovett.
I'm staying with a friend, and a dear friend of hers came home from a walk and found her husband had fallen, and we don't know how he's doing, but he's frail, old, and ill anyway. So for Winifred's husband and Winifred, I will just say a Misha Berach.
And I'll add Nella, who is dealing with a cold. They say it's going around, but it should have kept going instead of stopping here. But I'm hoping she'll be feeling better.
Forgot to mark your doorpost.
That's it. Must be it. Yeah.
Oh, it's been a while. You ready for me?
Yes.
Oh, bless the ones before. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe berach imotenu, makor havracha, stars and with flame on the renewal body, the renewal spirit, and let us say Amen. Ooh, without
Thank
my
you.
hearing aids, I don't know what I started that high. I still made it.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, if you want to unmute, we'll do this together.
Not on the Zoom.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
asher
asher
kitshanu
kitshanu
mitzvotav
mitzvotav
v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
la'asot
la'asot
b'divrei Torah.
b'divrei Torah.
It's not today.
Okay, well, we have a lot. I guess we could get through a fairly sizable chunk, but I'm not sure. Aviva, do you have a good stopping place for this for a
Yes,
second?
3 lines, and we're going to stop because we're going to
Okay.
give it context after 3 lines. And
Okay.
then, you know what? I don't even know. The whole thing just reads as one long laundry list, but we'll start with 3 lines, and then I have possible divisions from there to 20 and then to the end of 35, pretty much.
So, well, why don't I take him? I'll be first up since I'm here, and then 3 lines I can handle.
Yeah.
And Moses assembled the community of Israelites and said to them, "These are the things that the Lord has charged you to do. 6 days shall tasks be done, and on the 7th day there shall be holiness for you, an absolute Sabbath for the Lord. Whoever does a task on it shall be put to death. You shall not kindle a fire in all your dwelling places on the Sabbath day."
So I looked at that. You know, I studied this parasha quite deeply because Leah had her bat mitzvah with this parasha. And it's pronounced, by the way, I hate to correct Alan, but it's Vayakhel with a kuf, because it's from the word kehillah, community or congregation. And it's interesting. The first 3 lines read as a group, but if you really look at them separately, it says that Moshe congregated the entirety of the congregation and told them, these are the things you should do, right? This is the thing that the Lord has charged, saying. And so I separate that from, yeah. No, the first 3 lines, I'm sorry. There you go. So it says, these are the things that the Lord has charged you to do. And then it looks like it says that the Lord has charged you to keep the Sabbath. But the way I read it after listening to a couple of different commentaries is the whole laundry list of what's being asked to do starts with remembering that even when doing holy work, you break for the Shabbat, for the Sabbath. So you separate the first line from the next two. And it says, no matter what else is going on, the most important thing is to stop and rest for Shabbat. So that's how I looked at it this year. I never really thought about it that way. You then wants to speak.
And I had posed that it's possible because of the way we read that maybe the anger that Moses was showing had more to do with the pesel, the golden idol was being made, and all of it was on the Shabbat. And then because the way it's written, it immediately talks about the Shabbat. So that sort of suggests that that the main anger is a violation of the Shabbat, the way it's written, more than the golden calf itself. You don't actually hear God condemning the golden calf.
But he does. We do hear, at least as in the Torah, in last week's parsha, there was an anger on behalf of God, just basically saying these people I can't do anything with them. I'm going to get you a new group.
Sure, but you don't know if maybe he's getting angry because there's doing all this on the Shabbat.
Yeah.
Because look, that's the first thing that comes up both in last week. After that, the first violation that is mentioned is that, and in this parsha, once again, the first thing is mentioned is a Shabbat. Anyway, it's just one of my random theories, you know.
The rest of the parasha reads very much like about 2 weeks ago. Even the wording and the specificity seems to be mirrored. So, we'll talk about that as we read it. But whereas a couple of weeks ago, at the beginning of the talk of building the tabernacle or the Mishkan, the talk was future oriented. You will instruct them and they will, et cetera, et cetera. In this parasha, as we start reading the next few lines, it becomes an active. So those same instructions that were future oriented are now being implemented. So a lot of the same names and a lot of the same instructions with the specificity of the types of fabrics and et cetera, the types of wood and the lengths and everything. So that's the context for this parasha being here after the story of the golden calf. That as we talked about the story of the golden calf being the space in between the two writings of the tablets, and that Moses had to have a big sit down conversation with God saying, yeah, don't get angry. These people are just not ready. They're not ready. They're going to need a journey, a long journey. And so here we are sitting in Israel, and we know this terrible time is going to pass over. It's not going to be like this forever. Nobody can live this way forever. The economy is shut down. There's just things are just awful in that way that, you know, that moving forward feels very difficult. And what's the first thing you do after a tragedy that affects all people together, or a bad event that all people share together? You get down to community building, Vayakhel. You gather your congregation and work together. If anyone has ever seen a small country in a time of tragedy, you see what working together really feels like. There's no um, there's no us or them. It's all us. In the little pettinesses of everyday life, all that disappears. So the word Vayakhel, to congregate, Moses realized that people need to be together on the project, on the journey. So the first order is to bring people together as a congregation and a community.
We also talked about the nature of the two writings. The first one being one that God did, that Moses turned around and broke, and that if we thought about the failure of God, there's a failure of God too. Part of the anger that God expresses in my mind is that he has failed with this group so far. He's taken them this far, and then he turns around and said, well, I did all this stuff for you. What about you? And I'm angry with you. But in reality, by Moses turning around and writing it, remember that the memory of the people was not that God took them out. It was that Moses was the leader. So maybe important that the second writing, the second creation of the Luchot Abrit, of the Ten Commandments, is actually done by Moses, who is one who is accepted by the people as their leader. And that, God needs to come around as well, in my mind.
I think it's interesting that you say accepted as their leader, because that sticks out in my mind is how it was described when the rebels, or whatever we should call them, the people who called for the idol to be created, said that man Moses, as though who put him in charge? Yeah, where is he? Where is he? And who made him the boss?
But they didn't say, "Where's God?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was how they think about this. This whole group of slaves encounters this invisible person, this invisible entity that can do all these things. Where do you actually put that in anybody's life when they've been a slave their whole life? Right. I mean,
yeah.
Well, how would you like to handle the laundry list? Should we?
So I thought we should maybe go, this is how I decided. We'll go through line 20 and then, or we can just finish book 35 and I have it line 20 and then to 30, 20 to 20, and then 29. And then we can decide from there.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm starting.
Yeah, right there.
And Moses said to all the community of Israelites, saying, this is the thing that the Lord has charged, saying, take from what you have with you a donation to the Lord, whose heart urges him. Let him bring it, a donation of the Lord, gold and silver and bronze, and crimson, linen and goat hair, and reddened ram skins and ochre-dyed skins and acacia wood. And oil for the lamp, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the aromatic incense, and carnelian stones, and stones for setting in the ephod and in the breastplate. And every wise-hearted man among you shall come and do all that the Lord has charged, the tabernacle and its tent and its cover and its clasps and its boards, its bolts, its posts, and its sockets, the ark and its poles and all its furnishings, and the curtain for the screen, the table and its poles and all its furnishings, and the bread of the presence, and the lamp stand for the light and its furnishings, and its lamps, and the oil for the light, and the incense altar and its poles, and the anointing oil, and the aromatic incense, and the screen of the entrance of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering, and the bronze grating that belongs to it, its poles and all its vessels, and the laver and its stand, the court hangings and its poles and its sockets, and the screen of the court gate, the pegs of the tabernacle and the pegs of the court and their cords, the service garments to serve in the sanctum, the sacred garments for Aaron, the priest, the garments of his sons to be priests, and all the community of Israelites went out from before Moses.
All right. So
Where'd they get all this stuff?
actually, I tried to go down that rabbit hole a little bit, Alan, and the best explanation, I got this from the Reform site, the Reform site, and it was a commentary specifically on one of the obscure things found in here. I forget which one. It was something about tanned leather. And basically what he was saying is you can look for all these things, but it's a rabbit hole. We don't really know what they meant. And it leaves it in that category of you should always study it in wonder. So I thought, wow, that's a pretty big cop out. But there are explanations for each of the individual ones and why they make sense in that context. But especially because of this parasha being what it is, they seem to always lean into the meaning that none of these things were easy to come by or easy to make into what you were using them. So what it puts the people into the act of creating. That seems to be the theme. So when you read about the leather of a particular animal, that is it a sea animal? Is it a land animal? Is it a kosher animal? Is it a not a kosher animal? That the discussion among the wise people, the chachamim, always has to do with binaries. Well, it could be this or it could be that. And coming to an agreement was not the important point. Rather, the obscurity is purposeful. It puts things into a category where it takes more work than just finding found objects that are all around you. It's the best I could do. Arnie.
Yeah, I got back. So, everything I've been studying about the archaeology and everything else, I've mentioned this before, but it's most likely there was a political upheaval in the Holy Land, and the Egyptians left Israel rather than the Jews leaving Egypt. So all these things would have been readily available at home for them. The storytelling passed through generations keeps getting better and better because it was an oral history until stuff was written down many, 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 many generations later. So, I'm a guy who believes in science, and, I love these stories. They're so important to my culture and to me, but, I take them with a grain of salt and, believe in science and archaeology. So, and it doesn't make any difference to our story, really, which way you look at it.
That's true.
Alan?
I do find the specificity, though, interesting. Certain types of wood, like acacia, which is probably not too hard to come by in the region, but not easy wood to work either. So it involves having craftsmen who know to do that. And so if we layer onto that what life might have been like for in under Egyptian rule, it seems like they might not have had access to these things, but had the knowledge of working with them. because some of it is there's an elegance to it when you talk about these the descriptions of how the gold is going to be hammered onto the surface of the ark and the table and things like that. It's not just a matter of throwing it together. There's a real elegance and quite as I think there's something that's very dramatic, almost showman-like. That's being called on here, and so it's interesting that the crafts were there, but being able to have the materials to do it for yourself would have been a new experience for them.
Or they were always there. All the materials were there in where they were living, which was Israel at the time, or Judea, and I'm not sure of the geography exactly, but as I said, the archaeology seems to show that there were some people in Egypt acting as mercenaries for the Egyptian army, and that was evidenced by the finding of the temple in Elephantine, that island, and yet there was overwhelming evidence that the Jews were still there in the Holy Land that whole period of time. Archaeological evidence is pretty solid with that. So.
Temple in Elephantine.
He doesn't. Somebody could be there, and somebody adjacent to Jacob and his sons could have been there. But well, first of all, we said before, there's nothing so far. The archaeology hasn't shown any definitive scientific, physical evidence of what occurred at Mount Sinai, as we tell it in our liturgy. I think it's very hard for us because in some ways it's like, if the ancient Greeks were around, this is a mythology to a certain degree, is it not? And all of us here, that's where we keep getting into this problem of how literally do we want to take this? And if we take it even more faith-based, anything that was needed, Hashem was going to find a way to provide it, whether it was the manna from heaven or the hardest, the best wood to use to make a sturdy tabernacle, So, that's why I keep with this kind of stuff. It used to be we all were like that, the laundry list. Who wants to go through these? We'd rather either have the narrative, or we're talking about the super internal relationships between human beings. But I think we have to look at these kinds of elements with a little more of a not as literally. You know what I mean? I've come around to this many times, and I'll say it because Arnie and Matan and everything is that a lot of this description, I believe, is a relatively simple way to try to distinguish between the sacred, holy, and the mundane, everyday. The number one way of doing that is the Shabbat versus the rest of the week. But it's also what we use to make the garments, and it has to be this silk, and it has to be this number of threads, and this color blue, and all that. It's to get us in a mindset of this is not ordinary, and when it's not ordinary, it's elevating our spiritual, mental, path in how to live a holy, just, and good life.
I like that you're just bunching it with the other miracles and wonders. And why not? Why not? It's the easiest way to deal with it.
I think Bezalel was quite the craftsman. To be able to create what you're saying is created there in the desert, seems it would have been overwhelming. Setting up forges and having the tools, schlepping all the tools necessary to do that type of work, which is really complicated type of work. Putting gold onto a wooden frame and all this stuff. You'd be challenged today to be able to do it.
In that light, I'd like to get us through, and Alan, I just decided I'm going to combine the next two things. So let's go through the end of chapter 35 because the most important lines pertaining specifically to what Arnie just said are coming
Okay.
up in there. So
Okay.
whoever's got good breath.
I think Matan had a hand up for a moment there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just going on with what Ruth Ellen said. We have a very elaborate Kiddush cup. We have elaborate Seder plates. We could use any plate. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be any fancy. It doesn't. You could use a paper cup, but we in our rituals we make it better than the ordinary,
Yeah.
and that's sort of I think what is getting at with all this.
Right.
I use the term sanctify, that we're elevating, just like you're saying, Arnie or Matan. And we have Judaic all through the house, and we that's part of the way we honor the whole thing and
And I
sanctify it.
would add that's a way to represent in the post-temple period, the sense and the feeling that they were trying to elicit in Moshe giving these instructions to make this exceptional place to commune with God. So yeah, that fits into, and we like shiny things, don't we?
But I think it's interesting that over the course of whatever's happened over the centuries, we've moved more toward the austere, where there is an offshoot religion of ours, Catholicism is the example I think of, where they've retained this theatrical aspect. And you walk into a Catholic church and it's sparkling in comparison to the simplicity that you find in most shuls. Certainly in Orthodox, but even in conservative and some Reform, it's much more austere in comparison.
Well, I was brought up, we didn't have music in our synagogue at all. I mean, it was pretty looked down upon to play musical instruments on Shabbos. So, yeah, when you read about the worship that was happening in the temple, though, they described it in, I think it was the last Torah parsha, as there was trumpets and cymbals and harps and everything going on.
But I
So,
was dancing around the golden calf, so I'm not sure.
oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, they were into music, which I love as part of this synagogue that experience I'm having with you guys is the first time I've ever heard music in a service.
Oh,
Hey, Matan, take us out.
Should ask him if he wants to accompany.
Okay. And
Go
every
ahead.
man and every man whose heart moved him, and everyone whose spirit urged him, came. They brought a donation of the Lord for the task of the tent of meeting, and for all its work, and for the sacred garments. And the men came beside the women, all whose heart urged them. They brought brooches and earrings and rings and pendants, every ornament of gold, and every man who raised an elevation offering of gold to the Lord, and every man with whom was found indigo and purple and crimson and linen and goat hair and reddened ram skins and ochre-dyed skins brought it. Whoever donated a donation of silver and bronze brought a donation of the Lord, and with whomever was found acacia wood for all the tasks of the work, they brought it. And every woman wise-hearted with her hands spun and brought the thread work of indigo and purple and crimson and linen. And all the women whose hearts moved them with wisdom spun the goat hair. And the chieftains brought carnelian stones and stones for setting in the ephod and in the breastplate, and the spice and the oil for the lamp, and for the anointing oil, and for the aromatic incense. Every man and woman whose heart urged them to bring for all the tasks that the Lord had charged to do by the hand of Moses, the Israelites brought a free will gift to the Lord.
Alan, let's go the next 5 lines through 35. There's a reason. Sorry.
And Moses said to the Israelites, see, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, from the tribe of Judah. And he has filled him with a spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in every task, and to devise plans to work in gold, and in silver, and in bronze, and in stone cutting for the settings, and in wood carving to do every task of devising. And he has given in his heart to instruct he and Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, from the tribe of Dan. He has filled them with heart's wisdom to do every task of carver and designer and embroiderer in indigo and in purple and in crimson and in linen, and of weaver, doers, every task and devisers of plans.
Thank you. So that gives Arnie the context to what you're saying. The very important line about Bezalel and what he is being endowed with to be the leader. He's being called to be the leader of all the artisans. And there are 3 words that have become, in Jewish study, the word chokhmah, binah, and da'at, or chokhmah, tvuna, and da'at, and they are in line 31 or so. And what they mean, I wrote this down from a Hebrew site, and this is by the commentator Rashi. The word chokhmah pertains to what we learn from others. In other words, we are people and we learn from other people. We don't have everything already in us to know the knowledge of, you name it. In this particular case, craftsmanship. Okay. And then the word tvuna is that ability that comes from within, innate qualities or talents, that you're born with, that make us all individuals, that makes us different from each other. And then the last word, da'at, is what we learn from a divine source. And so when Bezalel is named by name, this is very important. He says, I have a very terrible translation, but Moshe said to the children of Israel, see, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri. Thank you, Alan. See, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, and he has filled him with the spirit of God in wisdom, chokhmah, understanding, binah, and da'at, knowledge, and in every task. So that's the key that all of this rests on to me, is that the building community is what is happening. This idea of making a people, it takes a certain kind of work. And the realization after the great conversations between Moses and God that we weren't privy to is Moses says, you know what? Don't get so angry again. These are just people. They work better together. And if you give them a task, that's a very important task to make something holy, then they will do it because we're going to find the right people. First, we're going to take a person who has artistic qualities, has shown the ability to learn from the divine and from other people. And from there, we'll start. And that's really the beginning of community building, is the idea that to build something significant, people have to work together. And to make it meaningful, they have to observe the holiness. So that's why I think this parasha starts with the idea of stopping for Shabbat, even when you're doing the most important task, which is community building or building a tabernacle to worship in. Arnie, you have
Yeah, I find that all the creative people I've ever talked to about their creativeness, talking about artists, musicians, singers, everybody, they say they channel this energy, so, and me too, I don't know where it comes from when I start doing a painting or, start creating a comedy routine or something, stuff just comes to me. It's definitely a channeling, and it must be from something greater than myself, for sure.
My hand is raised and no one's saying
Oh,
anything.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm tired.
I know, me too. I just had one of my epiphanies about what you're saying with community and everything and building, and that this is the last parsha, and we come into Exodus with a Pharaoh arose that did not know Jacob. The Israelites were forced to build, but not for something holy, not for themselves. They may well have had skills or developed skills because they're building the pyramids and everything. This is an amazing bookend, it seems to me, which it's like a physical manifestation of the transition out of slavery into freedom, having the choice, having their creative juices flow, giving freely they weren't forced to go and get so much straw. They freely gave what they have to this purpose. And then when you add on top of that the element of the synergy of it being for the whole community, it's really something awesome. And I just for the first time kind of saw that, that thread through the whole thing that I kind of nice, I think. Thank you.
Maybe to follow on that a bit, if we think about where they have come from, there's a certain tribalism. It seems like the groups knew that they were part of different tribes, if you will, from within the entire community, such as it existed, but nothing unifying them. And they're not told to give up that tribalism. They're not told, and in fact, what will come out later, I think, was the importance of, for instance, maintaining things within their particular tribe of the entire community. But the idea of creating community would have been unknown to them. And so this is a whole new exercise in saying that not only are you from Dan or Yehuda or whichever tribe you're from, but you also now have to learn to work together. And if weavers come from one tribe and goldsmiths come from another, they still all have to contribute together to make this unified goal of the Mishkan.
You are very correct in that assessment, because there are I'm not sure if it's in this parasha or actually the next one, which actually this year we read a double parasha, but I wasn't going to say anything about it. It's Vayakhel Kudei. And then in the next parasha, it talks about the various people mentioned here, like Bezalel, and where they come from, which group they come from. So that is a very important thing you said, Alan. Not only are what Ruth Ellen said at the beginning of this book that we are about to finish, because we are finishing it.
Mm-hmm.
We might not finish as a group today, but next week we're reading from the first chapter of Vayikra. So we are finishing it in this sitting. So what Ruth Ellen said, that the one bookend of the people coming directly out of slavery, right? And then what Alan is saying, which is they are already delineated by groups. They don't come from the same tribes. Even as a people who came out of Egypt, they are already not together. They're tribes. And, tribalism, we use the term tribalism in this day and age, and it connotes a very negative thing. The word tribalism is not a positive thing, whereas as when we see ourselves as Jews, we feel like we are a tribe, but we are a number of tribes. And let's not forget that tribalism is something that divides people. So, yeah. Oh, Ruth Ellen, go ahead.
Well, this points out something as well, the dichotomy, in some ways, to distinguish the tribes according to what they do best, is really like an economic model. When you have the division of labor and specialization, you get improvements, you get innovations, you get more efficiency, you get an ease. The problem is in human nature is if we think that no one can do it without us or we can do everything alone, we don't see the big picture. And having these special skills like I can't say his name, but Salel or whatever, they're going to be elevated, but he's also inspired. So he's not doing it for his own aggrandizement or whatever. It's for a higher cause. And when people you need both. So to distinguish and when Jacob distinguished all his sons, what they will do and what they will have, that is the unsaid goal is that is how it's going to best serve the whole. But if people get jealous, if they get selfish, if they get high on their horse, then they're not looking at that bigger picture. But sometimes people look at the bigger picture and they miss the minutia. We need both, and it's really hard. I think that as human beings, we're just constantly trying to balance the macro and the micro, so to speak. You know, I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think if we don't recognize that, then that's when we fall into more despair, disorganization, and distrust of each other.
Matan put something interesting from AI in the chat. The Hebrew word tribe, shevet, which also means a staff, rod, or branch, symbolizing a branch of the family of Jacob. Another term, mateh, is used in the Bible and also means a rod or staff. The 12 tribes, Shvatim, are the ancestral divisions of the Israelites. Yes, that is true. And actually, when you look at a current map of Israel, it has the word mateh interchangeable for the word region, because the regions are named after the tribes. So like on my app, on my phone, where I get the alerts that tell me soon there might be a siren, if you look at the map, there are areas known as Yehuda and Shomron and, all the areas that are by name, the area of Dan and Menashe, they are the tribes. That's the map here is very clear. And we have in the story of, I forget in which parasha it is, when not all the tribes want to cross over. Some say, we kind of like it here. We like it here. We got what we need. And they get an agreement that says you can stay there, but when they need you, you have to still show up when you are needed.
No, they actually don't even say that. They offer
Yeah.
To lead. Say, we're going to prove ourselves that, even though we want to stay here because we like the land that's here, to prove ourselves, we will lead going across and fighting the fights.
Okay.
I wanted to pick up on something that Arnie said earlier about the inspiration, about the idea of artistic inspiration, because I think one of the to my mind at least, one of the very valuable things about the description of what Bezalel, who he is and what he's going to contribute, is that he is given the freedom to express himself artistically through this work. Even though so much detail is described about what it's to be made from and how large it's to be and the features of it, it doesn't say all the decorative aspects that he brings to it. And he's not forbidden from doing that. He's, in fact, encouraged to do that. And whether you call it something divinely inspired or just, left brain, right brain, some people have that, can look at a piece of wood and picture what can it be carved into, and others of us just see a 2x4. But it's something that is celebrated in him.
Arnie, and then Alan, if it's not too much for you, if you can just pull up line 35, the last line we just read, because that's exactly what you're talking about. It says it right there. So, Arnie, go ahead. Oh, David Jackson.
I was going to say, let's look at that line first, and then I'll see how it relates to what I was going to say.
Cool. Hang on a second. I have to get the image up. There we go.
He has filled them with heart's wisdom to do every task of carver and designer and embroiderer, and in indigo and in purple and crimson and linen, and of weaver, doers of every task and devisers of plans. So it's he, mile otam, right? And the line before that, he is given in his heart to instruct, given in his heart. He has been given the ability to instruct. And then he has been filled with the wisdom of he filled them with the heart's wisdom. All this is very significant. They are not just people who happen to have talents. If you think of you know, humans being a pile of dust until God blows air into them and they become human. It's that same thing. They are people. They might have talents, but it's the being imbued with the breath, with the instructions, with chokhmat halev, the wisdom of the heart. That's how they go forth to bring their art.
So that's what I was kind of agreeing with in the fact that, okay, so I went to art school. I learned, the very basics of how to paint, how to draw, how to plan, how to lay out, do all these things that are the skills required to do a painting. But what happens inspirationally is you get this flash in your mind of what you can create. And then it's an interactive process of what, your body can do and your mind could envision and your talents can bring forth from this vision. And it's like this vision that I'm saying is the inspirational part, not actually painting it, because that I was instructed how to do these skills, right? But to visualize it and look at a blank canvas and see what's going to be on it is the inspirational part that comes from somewhere. It's like tuning in or something. It's very spiritual.
To Alan's point about how much leeway Bezalel was given, this is also crazy. We talk about divine inspiration, and now I see this as a symbolic thing too, because this is the manifestation physically of the covenant. A covenant means it takes two. We keep talking about this. It is not Hashem alone. And if it was, everybody would just be, little worker bees or worker ants, whatever they call them. And there would be no free will. There would be no synergy of trying to follow and be holy as Hashem is holy, but with your own creative spin on it, so to speak, So, so I think that's a way of pointing to the fact, again, Hashem is giving us the choice. Walk straight, the blessings and the curses, and it's still up to us to make that choice for ourselves and then suffer the consequences or not. And this is like a corollary to that. You contribute to the degree that you are willing to sublimate all your desires to the whole. You will benefit from the wealth and the strength of the whole community, the whole organism. But then to the degree that you express your own unique creative way of making that contribution, gives you agency as a holy entity in and of oneself, So it's hard to put into words, but I think that's a beautiful thing, as opposed to it being Zeus coming down and saying, "I'm making you."
And
do
also,
this.
I'm sorry, as Arnie was talking about art and the process of art, this is different than labor, because it is labor of the heart. So as you're pointing out, Arnie, as a pyramid builder under duress, you might have great ideas for how to do things. You might have a great engineering brain, or you might have artistic leanings, and you might have great ideas, but nobody's asking you. Part of the idea of being ready to become a free people has to do with that if each one in their innate abilities and innate talents are equal and encouraged. Oh, I want to hear what you're saying, but you're muted.
Lindley was grinding coffee, so I turned off. But, you know, they're also making magic. You know, when you make magic, it's a process, ritualistically. You have to go through all the steps to make the magic, right? And the schmaltzier you make it, the bigger the magic. And, this is all part of people building faith in this new religious concept that they're given. So, yeah, you got to get a lot of ritual in there. You got to get a lot of steps to the process. You got to get a lot of, of the community supporting it and community participation in order to make the magic happen.
I love what you're saying. The Torah has so many things built into it, and these are amongst the parts that people find the weeds or they skip through because it's not important. And yet here we're talking about the whole artistic process that's written into the Torah. And that is an amazing thing, and it's a blessing. We should spend the time doing it because they had to spend the time making this stuff.
Does it also bring up what said at the very beginning of the placement of this in the chronology of what's happened? What went on just before was a work of creation, of artistry, but not for a purpose that was benefiting the entire community, and in fact endangered the entire community. And so here it's saying, take those instincts, take those skills and apply them to something that everybody can benefit from.
That is exactly what I was trying to get at with the beginning of the beginning word, Vayakhel. It is bring the congregation together, right? And it's not bring the congregation together and some will sit and build and the others will watch. It is the act of building community as expressed through. And in this case, with so much detail about the actual materials and the artist and the great artist in charge of it. Bezalel is not tasked with creating everything by himself, but he is imbued with the spirit. So everyone is involved. There is a purpose. They're building something holy, but they're building a nation.
And everybody brings expertise at their own level. It's the flax didn't come from nowhere. There had to be some pretty good farmers to produce quality flax. And there had to be some pretty good dye makers who made the right color, and pretty good weavers, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we should do a chunk of reading. I'm probably not going to last till the end, but we can get the reading done. And Alan, I think this one, if someone has the breath to read the whole thing, there's not a particular reason to stop. There are a couple of good lines in here we'll dwell on later on. So someone with breath.
I could do it.
All right.
Okay. And Baziel and Oholiab and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord had given wisdom and understanding to know how to do the task of the holy work shall do all that the Lord has charged. And Moses called Bezalel and Oholiab and every wise-hearted man whose heart the Lord had given wisdom, everyone whose heart moved him to approach the task to do it. And they took from before Moses all the donation that the Israelites had brought for the task of the holy work to do it. And they, on their part, brought more free will gifts morning after morning. And all the wise men who were doing the holy task came, each man from his task that he was doing. And they said to Moses, saying, the people are bringing too much for the work of the task of the Lord charged to do. And Moses charged, and they sent word through the camp, saying, let each man and woman do no further task, for the whole donation and the people were held back from bringing. And the task was enough to do all the task and more. And every wise-hearted man among the doers of the task made the tabernacle, 10 panels of twisted linen and indigo and purple and crimson, 2 cherubim, designers' work, they made them. The length of the one panel, 28 cubits, and width 4 cubits to the panel, the single measure for all the panels. And they joined the 5 panels one to another. 5 panels they joined one to another. And they made indigo loops along the edge of the outermost panel and in the set, and they did on the outermost panel in the other set. 50 loops they made in one panel, and 50 loops they made in the outermost panel, which was in the other set, and the loops opposite one another. And they made 50 golden clasps and joined the panels to one another with the clasps, and the tabernacle became one whole. And they made goat hair panels for the tent over the tabernacle. 11 panels they made them. The length of one panel, 30 cubits, and a width of 4 cubits, and the panel a single measure for the 11 panels. And they joined 5 of the panels by themselves and 6 of the panels by themselves. And they made 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in its set, and 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the other set. And they made 50 bronze clasps to join the tent to become one whole. And they made a covering for the tent of red and ram skin and a covering of ochre dyed skins above. And they made boards for the tabernacle of acacia wood upright, 10 cubits the length of the board, and a cubit and a half the width of each single board. 2 tenons for one board linked to another. Thus they did for all the boards of the tabernacle. And they made boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the southern end, and 40 silver sockets they made beneath the 20 boards, 2 sockets beneath and 1 board for its 2 tenons, and 2 sockets beneath the 1 board for its 2 tenons. And on the other side of the tabernacle at the north end, 20 boards, and the 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets beneath the 1 board, and 2 sockets beneath the 1 board. And at the rear of the tabernacle to the west, they made 6 boards. They made 2 boards for the corners of the tabernacle at the rear. And they matched below, and together they ended at the top inside the 1 ring, and thus did they for the 2 of them at the 2 corners. And there were 8 boards with silver sockets, 16 sockets, and 2 sockets beneath the 1 board. And they made 5 crossbars of acacia wood for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 crossbars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 crossboards for the boards of the tabernacle at the rear to the west. And they made the central crossbar to shoot through the boards from end to end. And the boards they overlaid with gold, and their rings they made of gold, housing for the crossbars, and they overlaid the crossbars with gold. They made the curtains of indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen. Designers' work, they made it with cherubim. And they made it 4 acacia posts and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks gold, and they cast for them 4 silver sockets. And they made a screen for the entrance of the tent, indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen embroiderer's work, and 5 posts in its hooks, and they overlaid the tops, their bands with gold, and their 5 sockets with bronze.
Yasher Koch.
There you go.
That was
Do it
great.
yourself tabernacle.
So
Not only that, it's this is a builder's list. This is the bill at the end. I mean, this is where accountants came into the picture. Now I'm saying, okay, we got 50 sockets and 6 acacia poles, and and you have prices by each one. So that's what's missing from this is the price at the end of the column.
Bill of lading. Yeah, they're right.
It's a takeoff list, is what contractors call it, right?
So I'm curious because I have the basic the Chumash that I'm using is the Jerusalem Bible from the Koren Publishing. This is like the standard, right? Almost every home would have this. Hi, Marilyn.
We have a copy at home.
Yeah. And in my translation, almost every sentence Arnie just read started with, and they made. But the word in Hebrew is vaya'as, and that is, and he made. What a difference in translation. Because and they made is much more appropriate because we're talking about that's exactly what we're talking about. But the reference is always to Bezalel being the sort of the one who is imbued with the sense of wisdom and discernment and the ability to learn, right? Those three, chokhmah, tvuna, and da'at. And so the rest of my chapter reads vaya'as, and he made. And in the translation that we're reading, it says, and they made. So I find that very interesting. Both are very appropriate. Just literally, it doesn't mean that Bezalel does any of this on his own. It means he is tasked with the organizing and bringing out and encouraging people to bring themselves into what they're doing. Very interesting.
You know,
Arnie.
it says about 6 to 9 months it took them to build the tabernacle. It just doesn't seem like a long time to get all these materials together. Like, we're not talking about growing, the acacia trees or, spending a lot of time pounding the copper or gathering the copper. I just find it interesting. 6 to 9 months from, the time Moses went up to Sinai. I don't know how they all figure it out, but basically from the timeline. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. That's kind of interesting to me. The time, it seems miraculous to be able to build something in that small amount of time. I mean,
yeah.
I know they had skills. They had, skilled artisans. But the materials, unless they brought them with them from Egypt, I just don't know.
So I was just wondering if they recycled the golden calf for all that gold.
No,
Are these guys
Moses
just-
ground it up and made him drink
Yeah,
it.
they had to eat it, right?
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah, so they had to eat it. That's right. So they had more gold. I mean, these guys really
Oh
had a
yeah,
lot
that's
of
right.
gold.
They didn't use all the gold. That's right. You're right. They didn't use all the gold. That said it in it, right?
Yeah. Wow, what a lot of gold.
So we haven't read that part yet where Bezalel, however you say,
Bezalel.
Bezalel tells Moshe, we have too much, we don't need anymore.
Yeah, we read it.
Oh,
Right.
we did read it? Oh.
Because when the people are asked to freely bring their talents and freely bring what they're bringing, they are bringing so much that there's too much.
I think the materials must have come from Egypt. That people must gathered everything, because they brought a lot of wealth out of Egypt. So people, as a community, they must have gathered all that wealth and put it together for the materials. There just doesn't. I mean, the timeline doesn't fit that they had time to like go and find it somewhere or grow it and make the linen or whatever they used. It just doesn't fit.
That's why most likely they were in Israel all along, and it was the Egyptians that left.
I mean, except for the acacia wood, that might have been grown in the that's probably grows in the desert.
Yeah, but it's a good thing one of them brought a sawmill with him and the planer, and all the things.
Right.
But yeah, I see the okay. We're leaving tomorrow, so pack and say we got bread or acacia wood. Okay, I guess we better bring the acacia wood.
Right. So, and probably, and other things like the materials, like from the goats and things like that came from their own flocks, obviously. But the other things, I think one year we were talking about the women were weaving the hair from the goats right on the goats. Does anybody remember that? I remember saying that one year. They actually
Carry it. Yeah, they didn't have to carry it. The goats would carry it for them.
they spun. They
Oh,
started.
Midrashim.
Yeah, they started to weave certain things right on the goats, right on their hair. Kind of interesting. I don't know where I found that, but I'll try to look for it again. So, I mean, I'm just saying that because of the ingenuity of, what they were doing.
If you start looking at the commentary in Sefaria and some of the Midrashim and everything, so much of this is trying to explain it after the fact. It does kind of, our modern sensibilities, it's hard to take too much of this literally, right?
Well,
But then even the thing- Go ahead.
Okay, so the
Help
thing
me.
about taking it literally and having all this stuff, so let's just remember that at the time of gathering at Sinai, it wasn't the entirety of the people who were descendants of Abraham who were in Egypt. So if we talk about the gathering at the foot of Mount Sinai being all of the Israelites, some of them were never enslaved in that way, and some did probably have lives of that included, raising animals and whatever. There was more than just Egypt. There was more than just Egypt at Sinai. There were more than just the descendants of the people who went down to Egypt, if we consider that everyone was at Sinai.
But
I mean,
I don't think I buy that, Aviva. The children of Israel, not the children of Abraham.
Right.
We are now down. These are the chosen that we're going to be as an example. And that's to Arnie's point about which sounded weird to me, the archaeology that showed that the Holy Land had people there doing stuff, and that maybe there were Egyptians there. Yeah, there were definitely other people there, and even the Edomites, all these other people, they're children of Abraham, but they're not Israelites specifically. We can't we have to be really careful about how we use this language, and even as it is, there's so much confusion. So
I think
I
that
don't.
though that if we try to look too logically at the archaeology and the realism of where did they get the gold, where did all that, I think it's a little bit distracting because the concept of nation building, the term being at Sinai, we were all there at Sinai. If you look at actually what that means, it means a lot more. It's even considered the people who are converts were there at Sinai because their souls were there, even though in their, in
Right,
their
but they count
corporeal.
as children of Israel, maybe through a
Right,
zigzag pattern, right?
right. So I'm just taking that, like, I think we're getting a little, you know, I don't think our stories were meant to be realistic. There is, um, there is a reason why we tell these stories, and it's not, we're not telling them to be historically exact, because we would never, get the greater picture. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet and then call on Sarah first and then Arnie.
So I do take literally some parts of this. I think that they did, I think that Egypt was a very developed civilization for its time. It had all these things, it was rich. And I can just see that they would have not only the materials that they brought with them out of Egypt, but also the skills. I think that, I mean, in Egypt they knew how they were smith, what do you call it, metalsmiths, is that what you call them? I don't know. So they would know how to cast, metals and smelt metals, and they would know how to cut the stones to fit the ark. I absolutely think that they knew all the how to embroider, how to weave. These are just normal kind of things, engraving, that they would have known living in that civilization that would have been handed down over so many generations. So that part of it, I kind of, for me, it's not a big leap to take that part literally, or that they brought the materials out of. I mean, the ark wasn't like a, gigantic thing. I mean, they carried it. It was heavy, but it wasn't gigantic. So I could definitely see with all those people that amassing it together as a community and amassing the skills together, that they could have gathered the materials and turned it into the tabernacle, the Mishka.
Sarah, I would only answer you quickly to say, I don't think we're arguing that it's realistic and literal to say that the people had these skills, but we keep getting stuck on it. And I did too until I read it closely, that most of this precious stuff was taken, borrowed from the Egyptians. And we can later look at that and say, was that fair or was that payback for years and years and years of exploitation? So
Obviously it was payback, like they're leaving.
Well, that was
And
a rhetorical question, but we get hung up with this. Where did they get all these materials? Well, even to the degree it's literal. The fact that they were inspired, that they also learned through whatever civilization they were living in, is how to use those materials to make these things. I don't think any of us are saying that we deny that maybe didn't happen at some realistic level, if we ever find archaeological evidence.
So that's why I said that part of it I find easy to be, easy to look at it realistically. That part of it, yeah. I agree.
I would say that too. The whole question
but
is like,
but also I could see them, I could see that they took all this stuff when they left. It was there, it was available to them, they knew where it was, and they're like saying, hey, we're not going out in the desert with nothing. I mean, we've been schlepping all these generations for the Egyptians, and they used us and they didn't pay us, and we, whatever we did, and it's payback. I could totally see that. So for me, it's not a hang up. Anyway,
Let's hear what Arnie has to say on the subject.
Yeah, if I was going to tell the story, I would tell it this way. The Israelites were subjects of the most political parties of their times, the nation of Egypt, and were vassals to the state of Egypt. And eventually, Egypt was threatened by another political source. And I'm trying to remember, who it was exactly, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Parthians, the Sumerians, one of those groups. At any rate, those groups were putting pressure on Egypt. They hired Jews as mercenaries who lived near the southern border of Egypt, near Aswan, in an area called Elephantine, and built a temple there. And there's correspondence between that temple and the temple in Jerusalem at that time, because they were asking for some help and some funds because of the political turmoil. They have absolute evidence of this in writings back and forth that they found archaeologically. Well, the Egyptians were losing power and they withdrew from Israel. And the people were freed from their bondage to the Egyptians. They no longer had to work the fields for the Egyptians. They no longer had to do all the crafts for the Egyptians. And they were able to freely start worshiping their own gods again. And they came together, and this story got retold over hundreds of generations and got better every time they told it, until it was finally written down. And it's still a fabulous story. And even though, it's been augmented a bit, it doesn't diminish it in my heart at all. And still has the same message. So I don't think we should get hung up on whether, necessarily it's true or not, or even believe it's totally 100% true or not, but just marvel at the incredible storytelling that's lasted all these generations and given us all faith.
Let's let Marilyn. Marilyn, are you trying to talk to us or? Yeah, you muted again. You just muted again. I'm going to jump ahead to Marilyn, then come back to Ruth Ellen. Marilyn hasn't spoken yet today.
Yeah. Hashem is real. That part that we're like, we've been protected and or ushered. That part is that we can remember that and believe that as true, as in the Passover story. We were there and we were delivered. So that, like you say, that's the faith builder, right? You have that to hang on to.
Ruth Ellen, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just, every time I tap this audio, I turn off the video. I was just going to take a little different tack, if anybody knows, because this is from Mishnah or whatever, the numerology we use and the symbolism. And we talked about this before, the exact sizes of things, as Alan pointed out. These were demarcated, although how it was embellished artistically within those parameters was left to the human artisans. But have we discussed that in the past? I was just curious if there is some kind of, spiritual elements to that. If we have discussed it before, I don't remember, but I'd love if anybody has any.
There
stories
is,
about
I'm not surrounded by my books, so I'm not going to try to speak on it. There is actually quite a bit, but besides the actual numbers, it's the idea of how they come
Proportions?
together, that the math makes things come together. It's about the coming together, like the description of the cherubim, the keruvim,
Right, yeah, oh yeah.
being right, and how they are. The wording in them is very important because they face each other. As a brother would face a brother, or a sister would face a sister. And when you talk about the 5 panels and how they're joined and the amount of loops, it's not just for the convenience of the carrying. There is in the numerology a lot of significance. I am powerless today to talk about it. I do need books in front of me.
I say I'm curious, but then I'd end up not maybe being curious enough to get off this call and do it at another time. It'll slip my mind. But I'm saying, what is in the Greek, like those, the not Archimedes triangle, or all, like the golden. I'm conflating a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? These
Golden
mathematical
mean.
and science. What?
The golden
Which-
mean.
The golden mean and those kind of things, and the way a right angle does special stuff. There may be some. Again, it's on multiple layers. There may be a more, physics, geometrical, mathematical design to it, or that can be defined. But,
Sarah has something to say about it.
Who built the pyramids? I mean, the pyramids, forget about who built the pyramids. Just the fact that the pyramids exist, which you want to talk about right angles, they don't even know today how the pyramids could have been built back then. So, I mean, think about that. That's like crazy that they had the technology to build the pyramids and the mathematical genius to build the pyramids and cut out all those rocks and make them into, I mean, it just blows my mind. Anyway, something else to think about, some other fantasy to think about.
They recently uncovered the workmen's camp next to the pyramids and found out that it wasn't evidence of a slave labor group, but people that were well fed and well housed, who were building the pyramids there. No evidence of them being Jews either.
So you
And next
bring up
year
an
they'll find-
interesting. Oh,
And
go
next
ahead,
year,
Sarah.
next year they'll find something else that'll
Yeah,
contradict
that could
that.
be true, for sure, for sure.
Arnie is saying something really important, though, and I think that, in the
Yeah.
context of the world we live in, let's dwell there for a minute. The act of enslaving people was not necessarily in and of itself an act of dehumanization.
Right.
So let's think a little bit differently about so the term slavery in American context means something really, really different. The the idea that a person who considers themselves a deity, I'm not saying this right, I'm way too tired to talk, but the idea that a person is designated as a god, right? Because in the Egyptian, the gods, the pharaohs were associated with various divine images or creatures, right? But the people who were building the structures to venerate the deities, they were not dehumanized. They were labor. And they were labor not in a good way, but not in that same way they were animals.
Do you
Right?
think that I always think of it more in terms of that the economy became dependent on the Hebrews? That's how I think of it. That's why Pharaoh did not want to give them up, because the whole economy would have caved in.
Right, but once the authority of the pharaoh being a deity was questioned, because the whole interaction with the 10
That too.
plagues and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that's when the dehumanization may have started, because
Yes,
they were a real
right.
danger. They were not just going to not be building the pyramids, but they could have amassed into an army. That's where
Interesting.
Pharaoh, right, because that's when Pharaoh, got afraid. A new Pharaoh arose who did not recognize, did not know,
Yeah.
and he
That's-
was afraid of them. So, but I think that slavery in biblical terms and all around that part of the world was less about dehumanization and more about building structures that venerated the gods.
Yeah, that's right.
Not megalomaniac personal wealth kind of thing that I don't think that was quite a thing in the same way yet.
I didn't really think of it that way before, but that's
Yeah.
a really, really good viewpoint.
But I think it is interesting that that's something that was left to Mishnah. As far as the Torah was concerned, we were introduced to the tribes, or Jacob and his family coming to Egypt and being established in Egypt, and then 400 years pass and these things had happened, but we really don't know what they built, or at least the Torah doesn't tell us what they built. At one point, we're told they're instructed to make bricks without straw. So, all right, they were doing some sort of masonry work. At least some of them were. But those details are left for us to fill in the blanks. But something like the Mishkan was so specifically outlined in the Torah, so specifically detailed that it could be recreated. And also, I think maybe more significantly, it could be rebuilt, because the idea of it was you were going to be able to take it down and then rebuild it in the next encampment. So it wasn't just a haphazard thing. It had to be the same every time. Otherwise, it wouldn't achieve its purpose.
Right.
And I think that having that detail makes it a very different kind of endeavor.
Yeah.
At least that we see, and comes back to that community building aspect.
Yeah.
That everybody
You
could look at it
basically
and say,
said it's a
we have part.
holy endeavor instead
Yeah.
of a forced upon
Yeah.
human endeavor.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have again, I'll take advantage of being able to share things, but this is from the 1890s, the Bibles that, they would go around and sell, but it's pretty accurate in terms of that description that we just heard, in terms of the number of panels and how they're connected and things like that. And you get a sense of the scale from this as well. So it's not some grand, marvelous edifice that people will look up at in awe. It's something that's on a human scale.
Mm-hmm.
Because the purpose of it is
Exactly.
very different. The purpose of it is not to venerate a god, but to have a place for God to dwell among humans.
Yes.
Right. So there's, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how low the cloud is? I mean, it's just barely above their tents, you know? I mean, yeah, it's just how it's interpreted.
Well, if anyone's interested in doing our KBS tradition of reading to the end, someone please take it on.
I
We're in
will.
37, and what did I have for 37?
Craig will.
Alan, I had it divided as like 1 through 9, 10 through 24, and then 25 through 29, but we can just do the whole thing, whatever everyone wants.
Okay.
Craig said he.
I will do it. My Hebrew name is Bezalel. So,
Oh,
okay. And Bezalel made the Ark of Acacia wood, 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And he overlaid it with pure gold, inside and outside. And he made for it a golden molding all around. And he cast for it 4 golden rings, and on its 4 feet, and 2 rings on its one side and 2 rings on its other side. And he made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. And he brought the poles through the rings on the side of the ark to carry the ark. And he made a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And he made 2 cherubim of gold, hammered work he made them at the 2 edges of the cover. 1 cherub at one edge and 1 cherub at the other edge. From the cover he made the cherubim at both its edges, and the cherubim spread their wings above, shielding the cover with their wings, and their faces toward each other, toward the cover their faces were. And he made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and made for it a golden molding all around. And he made a frame for it, a hand's breadth all around, and he made a golden molding for its frame all around. And he cast for it 4 golden rings, and set the rings at the 4 corners, which were at its 4 legs. Facing the frames, the rings were as housings for the pole to carry the table. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold to carry the table. And he made the vessels that were on the table, its bowls and its shovels and its chalices and its jars from which libation is done, pure gold.
I say keep plowing and then talk because it's
okay,
Craig
sounds
is
good.
I'll
Sure.
keep reading. Unless Craig wants to go on.
No, go ahead, Ruth Helen.
Okay. And he made the lampstand of pure gold, hammered work. He made the lampstand, its base and its shaft, its cups, and its calyxes and its blossoms were from that work. And 6 shafts going out from the sides, 3 shafts of the lampstand from its one side, and 3 shafts of the lampstand from its other side. 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms on the one shaft, calyx and blossom, and 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the other shaft, and thus for the 6 shafts that go out from the lampstand. And on the lampstand were 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, their calyxes and their blossoms, and a calyx under every 2 shafts as part of it, and a calyx under every 2 shafts as part of it, a calyx under every 2 shafts as part of it, for the 6 shafts coming out of the lampstand. Their calyxes and their shafts were part of it, all of it one hammered work, pure gold. And he made its 7 lamps, and its tongs, and its fire pans, pure gold. With a talent of pure gold, he made it, and all its furnishings. And he made the altar for burning incense of acacia wood, 1 cubit its length, and 1 cubit its width, square, and 2 cubits its height. From the same piece its horns. And he overlaid it with pure gold, its roof and its walls all around, and its horns, and he made for it a golden molding all around. And 2 golden rings he made for it beneath its molding on its 2 flanks as housings for the poles with which to carry it. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. And he made the holy anointing oil and the pure aromatic incense, perfumer's work. And he made the burnt offering altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits its length, 5 cubits its width, square, and 3 cubits its height. And he made its horns made its horns on its four corners. From the same piece were its horns, and he overlaid it with bronze. And he made all the vessels of the altar, and the pails, and the shovels, and the basins, and the flesh hooks, and the fire pans, all its vessels he made of bronze. And he made a meshwork bronze grating for the altar beneath its ledge from below halfway up. And he cast 4 rings at the 4 corners of the bronze grating as housings for the poles. And he made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with bronze. And he brought the poles through the rings on the sides of the altar to carry it. Hollow boarded he made it. And he made the laver of bronze and its stand of bronze from the mirrors of the women who flocked to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And he made the court for the southern side, and the hangings of the court were twisted linen, 100 cubits. Their posts 20, and their sockets 20 of bronze. The hooks of the posts and their bands were silver. And for the western side, hangings of 50 cubits. Their posts 10, and their sockets 10. The hooks of the posts and their bands were silver. And for the western side, hangings of 50 cubits. Their posts 10, and their sockets 10. The hooks of the posts and their hands were silver. And to the very east, 50 cubits, hangings of 15 cubits to the flank, their posts 3 and their sockets 3. And for the other flank on each side of the gate of the court, hangings of 15 cubits, their posts 3 and their sockets 3. All the hangings of the court all around were twisted linen. And the sockets for the posts were bronze, the hooks of the posts and their bands silver, and the overlay of their tops silver, and they were banded with silver, all the posts of the court. And the screen of the gate of the court was embroiderer's work, indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen, and it was 20 cubits in length and a height in the width of 5 cubits over against the hangings of the court. And their posts 4 and their sockets 4 of bronze. Their hooks were silver, and the overlay of their tops and their bands silver. And all the pegs for the tabernacle and for the courts all around were bronze. Ta-da! So they matched. I'm starting to think of like a song for kids, like the wheels on the bus. Let's add some bronze. Let's add some flavors. I'm a little wacky today, but
Seems to me it would have taken a lot of charcoal to smelt all that metal.
oh yeah. With Hashem, all things are possible. That's what I was going to say. I was just. Go ahead, Ari.
What puzzles me is how they wrought some things and cast some things. Logically, if you've worked with metals, some of those things that they wrought should have been cast instead, just by the process.
You would wrought iron and you would cast bronze, I believe, because they make castings and the pourings and all that. No?
What I'm talking about is when you do construction in any metal, that's rotting, okay? So you could construct something by making certain pieces and then soldering them together, or you could make a mold and cast it, right? And some of those things would be much easier cast than being wrought. I mean, that they're talking about. It's like such a arduous process to do it by hand and wroughting it, piece by piece and putting it together.
When I was skimming earlier about what Bezalel did, some of the rabbis and commentators said that in fact, it was like he made 3 arcs, like each material, and then one was overlaid on top of the other. So it was I don't know. I mean, I guess a way to strengthen it, or you could symbolically say you have the core, you have the bones of something, and then you create the protective barrier, and then you put the ornamental on top of that, I don't know exactly what it means, except it's kind of coordinates with how one would want to make something that would be everlasting.
But as we know from Indiana Jones, it could be lifted by two people.
Well, the one that Matan showed too. Look, I was going to say to him, did Steven Spielberg see that one? Because the one he posted, and then I was going to say, well, now that all will be revealed, but we were going to find that warehouse in Virginia somewhere. It's created. Now would be a good time for its power to be brought to force.
But you know, it does come back what I mentioned before about the Mishkan being on a human scale, and to have the dimensions of the ark given, which is not very, it wasn't very big, and so that means the tablets were going to fit into that. So this covenant that is the central part of our community was small enough to fit in a little box. So it's not a matter of it being, again, this magnificent edifice or something, you know, a tall tower that everybody looks up at, but something that's small enough to be able to hold up like we hold up the Torah at the end of the reading every Shabbat.
Well,
I think
since we were all
Sarah-
there, we all know somewhere deep in our core what it looked like when you imagine the tablets so big. And then I was just reading, some of the Mishnah now says that the broken pieces of the first sets of tablets were also put in there. I mean, you can't possibly imagine the scale we think of it now that people would be able to carry that around. And yet, is that not all symbolic? Because we always talk about this too, that you carry it in your heart and the Vayakhel, and it has to be small. It's macrocosm and microcosm at the same time. You don't even need that Mishkan. You can have your personal Mishkan, inside. And it's just, it's almost like Russian dolls boxes, right? I mean, they're different scales depending on what you need. If you're alone in your own room and you wake up and say, thank God Hashem let me have my soul back, or if you're in a synagogue on Yom Kippur, it just hit me that too, because that's what makes it a communal thing. You have to have a large enough scale and the use of the senses so that individuals can come together and sort of at least get the feeling that they're experiencing the same thing at the same time, when even then it's ethereal, because not everybody, even where they're sitting or what position they are around the tent of meeting will impact technically what their perception is, Very
I think
metaphysical.
Sarah's had her hand up for a while. Sarah,
Sorry.
go ahead, and then
That's
Arnie
okay.
also.
Okay, so from what I remember, every piece had to be cast because it had to be one piece per instructions to Moses. So I think the main thing, it wasn't like two pieces soldered together. I think everything, each individual structure or piece for the structure was cast. And then, the smaller things had to be hammered. So I would say that, so that's, so if there were, 10 pieces, each piece had to be cast individually, but it had to be, one piece. I don't know. Anyway, that's just what I remember. Like the lampstand, the golden lampstand, one solid piece of gold. And the angels, the cherubim, one solid piece of gold. But then it was hammered out of that piece of gold to form whatever. Of course, with the acacia wood, that would have been carved, right? But it probably would have been carved out of one piece of acacia wood. So that's symbolically, that's what I remember, is that one God, one piece. There's some kind of Kabbalistic thing in there about that. I don't remember what it is exactly, but that would be my guess, that things were mostly cast and not melded together. Oh, Aviva, you need to go to bed.
I I
As soon
do.
as you go to
But
bed, the sirens will go off.
let's hear Arnie, and I want to just because it is a double parasha, which means we won't be reading the next one before the next week. I'm just going to read the very end of it from my from Sfaria after Arnie, just so we put a context. So go
So
ahead, Arnie.
I was just wondering, where's the door to the cabinet to put the stone tablets in? I mean, it doesn't explain any hinges or any openings, but it's supposed to be in there. It's supposedly under the cherubim in that box, right?
Yeah.
So, how do they put them in there if there's no doors?
Was it behind a curtain?
No, look at the tabernacle. Look at the illustration that Matan
I
put
can't
in there,
see it.
right?
Oh, am I looking? Where is it?
It's under the
I
chat.
think we went through it so fast that we sometimes
Just
do
look
because
at chat.
there's
Oh, all right. Okay. I'll look at
Look
chat.
at chat. You'll see a picture of the thing. So where did they stick the tablets? And the other thing you were talking about, Sarah, they did talk about overlaying the acacia wood with gold. So to do
So,
that,
but that would have been poured, right?
no, they hammered the gold over the acacia wood.
Okay. So there would be hammering too. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the individual pieces they talked about, that they cast them. Some things were cast and some
Yeah,
things
but
were.
but what I'm saying, Arnie, is each individual piece would not be put together. Each piece would be cast as like the rings. Each ring would be cast. Even if there were, 100 rings, each ring
Yeah.
would be cast. That's what I was saying.
I
Yeah.
see what your point is.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering about where the opening is to the cabinet.
Well, that's a good question.
Um,
I bet it's
The-
in there somewhere. We just skipped over it because of the archaic language.
it's in the next parasha.
Yeah.
Oh,
Arnie,
and
abracadabra.
Ooh, good.
It's in the next parasha, which starts with a actual accounting of the amounts of things that went into it, and ends with, and I will read the end to you. Okay, so in I don't know where Alan is. Yeah, there you go. So in line 20, Alan, let's start at line 20.
Oh,
Alan's on
okay.
it.
Oh, it was on from above. Oh,
Right. So now, after he finishes putting,
wasn't there a gold lid too that went on top
okay,
of
so
it?
after all the instructions to put it all together, and there's dates and things attached now, line 20. And this is now Moses, took the set, and he took and set the covenant in the ark. And he put the poles in the ark, and he set the cover over the ark from above. So the covenant right there, ha'edut, the witnessing, the covenant. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and placed the curtain on the screen and screened the ark of the covenant as the Lord had charged Moses. Now comes the very end. And he set the table in front of the tent meeting on the northern side of the tabernacle outside the curtain, and he laid out on it the array of bread, etc., etc. And now, sorry, Alan, I actually was just going to do the last few lines, which start. Right, so that you were wondering about the covenant, where it fit in, and then let's jump right to line 34. That's what I wanted to end with, line 34. There we go. Thank you. And the cloud, this is after everything is set up, ready to go. And the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses could not come into the tent of meeting, for the cloud abode upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle.
So it was
And
from
when the
above. That's
Yeah,
right.
and when the cloud went up from over the tabernacle, the Israelites would journey onward in all their journeyings. And if the cloud did not go up, they would not journey onward until the day it went up. For the Lord's cloud was over the tabernacle by day, and fire by night was in it, before the eyes of all the house of Israel in all their journeyings.
Chazak, chazak,
Chazak,
benit chazak.
benit chazak. Thank you.
But it doesn't
Alan,
tell you where
oh.
where the stone tablets went.
They went inside from above.
What do you mean from above?
That's what it says.
The opening of the ark was on the top, and they put the stone tablets in there. They were lowered into the. They were lowered into
Oh, so
the.
underneath
into
the angel's wings is open. It's not covered on top.
No,
It was
got an
covered. It
opening?
was covered by with a gold lid.
yeah,
and
the
then-
cheruvim were on the lid, and so they lifted the lid off and put the tablets in, and then put it back, kind of like a pot,
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
covering a pot
Yeah,
or
Gotcha.
a chest.
and wasn't Aaron's staff in there too, and some other stuff? Something
I don't
else.
know.
Arnie,
That's
I
what
bet Houdini knew how it went in. You know, all those, it's just like right out of a giant magic show.
It's
So
No, it's
you were about to
just
say something,
incredible.
Aviva? No. Oh, okay. Okay. Good. Well, we made it. I didn't realize we needed Pikudei. I could have. I only saw the. So I apologize for not having that ready.
And you know what? It's as uninteresting to read out loud as was
Sure.
Vayakhel. So when parashot are like this, I really try to dwell more on the concept and what's important in there. Because yeah, we could have a discussion about all the minutia and the instructions and the measurements, and they do mean something. I don't mean to minimize them, but far be it from me to lead that kind of discussion. Whereas the greater concepts of why are we building this? The why is the easier part because it is what stays relevant. The why, like here we are, look at our world. We will come out of this conundrum
we can have a meeting place.
so that we can be a nation, so that we can build, so that we can do great things with the power in our hands and brains that is not building armaments.
It's like the root, like the core around which the community lies. It's the strength of the community, the belief system of the community, the philosophy. It's like what work the community put into it as a community. So I see it as really binding, and this belief in one God, which is the core belief of the community.
You know what? This also is like it's making an accommodation to the foibles of human beings. The people said, Moshe, we're too afraid. It's too strong. We can't talk directly. You be our guide. We have a face, a deity that we're supposed to be in their image, but we can't see their face, and they're not there. And yet, why do we have a golden calf? And why do all these other civilizations need something physical that they can focus their attention on? So this is so it's supposed to be the intermediary, and God is making a concession to the weaknesses of humanity to create, but instead of it just helter skelter on gold and blah blah calf, then it has a foundation, it has a meaning, it has a raison d'etre. But people still needed that. We would like to think that we don't have to have quote unquote solid physical evidence. Now we're going to get into when Einstein and all that comes together, and what we call solid is not really solid. And then that really gets into the spiritual esoteric about what do we need to have represented in a physical world, when what we're talking about ultimately has and must transcend that, because we're not going to stay in this form forever.
But if you contrast that with what happened earlier back in Breshit, when all the people got together to build a tower, and what's wrong with that? Great, everybody's working together to build the tower, except their purpose for building the tower was not
Was ego.
Yeah, it was ego. Exactly. It was not
It's not
for
holy.
something, for the betterment of the community. And so all of a sudden they couldn't talk to each other. So I think that's an interesting contrast to saying, no, this was not an acceptable community effort. This one is an acceptable community effort.
Yeah.
Then that's when I go back where it's hard to accept that this is the divine word of God that has come down, and that we can only have the Hashem can only exist in the form that humans can understand him. If you look at history, why do people try to explain what happened? Were there different, whether there was one unified theory or whether humanity evolved independently in different places, or whether there was a land bridge and it all started with one. At some point, there was this diversity and people didn't understand each other. And to me, I think it goes the other way. I think these stories came out of humanity trying to explain why we seem to be the same in so many ways, and we're all human, and yet we can't understand each other. So it's which came first, the chicken or the egg? But if you're going to take it literally, like that's where humanity, I think that's where we all get in trouble, because we don't have even an original source. We don't have speaking, an understanding beyond language to try to determine what it is that we could all agree on. We just heard, saw, felt, and tasted. It's.
But as Yehuda has often said, it's also God learning how to be God. How it's not just enough to have a people who are devoted to you, but you have to also know how to communicate with those people, how to motivate those people, how to make the community work without just doing it all with waving a magic wand sort of approach.
That's the two-way ladder. That's the two-way ladder. It's the whole basic thing. Could there be what is that saying? People say that if there wasn't a God, humanity would have to invent one, or is that what they did? It's it's heresy to the religion, to the quote unquote leaders of the. Oh, the other just funny thing I was going to say, like you were talking about, Alan, the whole idea, like if you watch the conclave or all that, after all that, it's the Catholic Church that seems to have the vestments and everything that are closest to.
Yeah.
And then a lot of those people don't see they're going to be anti-Semitic, but they don't even see, like the Pope wears a kippah. It's obvious to us.
Well, Aviva, we should it's after midnight. So,
Yep.
Stay safe.
I'm signing out.
Well,
okay.
And no update for today because you guys got an update, but I'll post some pictures and stuff tomorrow.
All right. Just keep doing
Aviva,
those
when are you scheduled to
those
come back?
bakeries.
We are scheduled to leave here on the 26th at 1 a.m. So we're not even beginning to inquire.
Yeah.
There are flights leaving, but they're not for people like us. So we'll have to
where did you go through? Where do you go through? London or what?
no, we're flying to Boston from here, but there are no regular flights going out. So there are flights coming in, bringing Israelis home, and those flights are taking some people out. If we were desperate, we'd probably go through the border crossing into Egypt and try to figure out how to get from there to, we're not desperate. We're with family, and
The 26th, that's your birthday, isn't it?
The 25th is my birthday.
25th.
Yeah, we actually,
Yeah.
So we're being very patient. We don't need to be a burden to anybody. Just trying to get to know the great nieces and great nephews to a point where we can actually be helpful. The little ones, the youngest ones don't know us well enough to for me to be like babysitting or anything. But the ones who are a little older and remember us from the last trip, or since we've been here for 2 weeks already, we can be more useful here.
How
It's
old is
good
the
to be with
youngest, or
family.